Welcome back. Today we're digging into a really comprehensive profile of the economist Gary Becker.
It is. It covers everything from his origins in a coal town to his work with the Chicago school.
It's a dense piece of work. You could tell the author really knows their stuff.
Absolutely, but it feels a bit like two different books glued together right now.
Exactly. So let's just jump right in. The first thing that really struck me is how the draft treats Becker's life and his theories as these two separate things.
Yes, it separates the man from the math, so to speak.
Hmm. And doing that, it loses all the dramatic tension of his actual journey, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, you get the whole life story up front, and then it's like a catalog of his greatest hits in the second half.
Right now, the text just presents his move into social problems, discrimination, crime, as the simple, logical next step.
But it wasn't that simple. Not at all. The weakness is that the narrative just completely misses the intense professional backlash he faced.
It glazes over it, it makes it seem like he just decided to study crime and everyone said, oh, okay.
When in reality, he was basically shouting into the wind for years.
So the suggestion is to reframe it.
Weave the biography into the theory.
Exactly. Create a protagonist versus the world kind of narrative. You have to show why the establishment hated these ideas so much.
And the notes are full of concrete examples for this.
They are. Like that anecdote with Bill Landis,
Oh, yeah,
where he's told applying economics to law is a career mistake.
a career mistake. I mean, can you imagine? A top professor tells him he should be working on production functions.
That's not just academic disagreement. That is a threat. It tells you everything about the stakes.
And it started even earlier. I mean, there's that quote from his high school math teacher.
Who is disappointed he chose economics over math.
Right, essentially saying you're too smart for this. It shows the resistance was, fundamental. People thought it was a waste of a good mind.
And you contrast that with Becker's own self-confidence, his thick skin, as he called it.
He had to be willing to be laughed at.
And then you bring in the Steve Levitt story.
The horns, it's perfect.
He literally checks the top of Becker's head for horns because he'd been taught at Harvard that this guy was the devil.
See, that's what we need. Instead of just saying he was controversial, you show that. You show the demonization.
It turns the whole thing into a character study. It's not just a list of papers, it's an act of intellectual rebellion.
Which is so much more engaging.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the section on crime. The whole discussion of rational choice theory runs the risk of sounding a little too abstract, I think.
I agree. It explains that criminals respond to incentives, conviction rates, all the standard Becker stuff.
But it feels too clean. The weakness is that it kind of glosses over the counter-arguments about irrational actors.
Right. Any reader is immediately going to think, wait, what about psychopaths? They aren't doing math?
And if you don't address that, the whole theory seems a bit naive.
So the suggestion is to tackle that head-on. Sharpen the definition of rational choice by focusing specifically on the psychopath exception.
The notes mention a footnote that Bill Landis found, right?
Yeah, where Becker himself addresses insane young offenders. He confronts the limits of his own model.
And it leads to that, what did Landis call it, a bizarre result?
A bizarre result, exactly. If you have a psychopath who is totally unresponsive to incentives, like a longer prison sentence doesn't deter them at all,
Then the purely economic model would suggest society shouldn't spend any money trying to catch them.
because it's a waste of resources, logically. Which is, of course, a terrifying conclusion. It sounds monstrous.
But that's the point. That's where the theory has to evolve. Right, you use that to pivot to the difference between deterrence, scaring people off, and incapacitation, which is just locking them up to stop them from hurting anyone.
It shows the model isn't dogma. It's a tool that had to adapt to reality, to the nuts, as Lanz put it.
And it answers the reader's biggest objection before they even make it. It's just a much more sophisticated and credible argument.
Excellent. Now let's shift over to the politics section. Becker's work on competition and democracy.
Right now, this part relies really heavily on some pretty academic language. Influence functions, deadweight loss.
It feels very dry, maybe a bit dated for a modern audience.
I think that's the weakness. It explains the mechanics of pressure groups, but it fails to connect it to this much punchier idea of imperfect competition.
Or entry barriers. Exactly. That's the key. Casey Mulligan's research in the source material is fantastic on this.
He talks about how political science now uses entry barriers to define democracy. A dictatorship is just a market with infinite entry barriers.
It's such a powerful idea, and he has that amazing data point about the American Economic Review.
Oh, right, 22 articles modeling elections.
And every single one modeled them as perfectly competitive.
Like politicians are just wheat farmers with no individual power. It's absurd.
The odds of that happening by chance were like 600,000 to 1. It just shows this massive blind spot in economics that Becker was trying to fix.
And we can make that so concrete with the local example.
The Cook County Board president.
Ran uncontested. It's a literal monopoly. There are zero entry barriers because there's no one else to vote for.
So if you recenter the whole section around entry barriers, it suddenly becomes so much more relatable. It's not abstract theory anymore.
It's why can't I vote for anyone else?
And that connects directly to his efficiency corollary, doesn't it?
It does. The idea that policies that raise efficiency are more likely to get adopted because deadweight loss is this thing that benefits absolutely no one.
So this competition between pressure groups, this rent-seeking, it's cynical, but it can actually be productive.
It reframes the whole thing. It's not just lobbying, it's a dynamic, if flawed, market process.
Much more provocative.
Okay, let's look at the section on the family. This is some of Becker's most famous work.
And yet, the section on the quantity versus quality of children is, it's just so thin compared to the other parts.
It is. We get pages on crime and then a paragraph on fertility. It feels like an afterthought.
And the weakness is that it introduces these ideas of time costs and human capital, but it doesn't really connect them back to the bigger rational choice framework we've been talking about.
It feels tacked on. It doesn't show that Becker was using the exact same toolkit.
I don't think the link between the time costs of children and opportunity costs is made clear at all.
Which is everything. The draft just sort of implies having kids is a biological thing. But for Becker, it was an economic decision, like buying a luxury good.
And we need to lean into how cold that sounds. The suggestion is to really expand the shadow price analysis here.
As people get wealthier, their time becomes more valuable.
More expensive. So the shadow price of a child who needs tons of your time, it just skyrockets.
So you buy fewer children, but you invest more in their quality.
Exactly. And you have to explicitly link this to the crime analysis. The logic is identical. A criminal weighs prison versus the loot. A parent weighs lost wages versus the utility of having a child.
And you have to contrast that cold language, investing in human capital, with the warm subject of having a baby.
That's the whole fame, applying economics to non-market behaviors. It shows he wasn't just jumping from topic to topic. It was one key for many different doors.
Okay, final point. There's a lot of energy in the manuscript spent defending the Chicago school from labels like conservative or anarchist.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It reads like a PR document. We promised we're not anarchists.
And it feels very reactive. The weakness is that by focusing so much on what the Chicago school isn't, it misses the chance to define what it is.
Which is a methodology, a way of thinking.
So instead of just defending, we should show the method in action. The suggestion is to pivot to that analysis of the 2008 financial crisis in the source material.
Because that demonstrates the flexibility of the school of thought perfectly.
Right. A typical free market zealot would just blame the government full stop. The Fed did it.
But Becker didn't do that. He said it was 3 things.
Government failure with the Fed's low interest rates, yes. Regulatory failure with Fannie and Freddie.
But, and this is the key, he also explicitly cited market failure.
He admitted the private sector got it wrong. The markets totally failed to price the risk in those assets.
And when you highlight that Becker blamed the market, it just shatters the stereotype. It shows he was following the data, not some political dogma.
It's a much more powerful argument than just saying, we're not conservative.
And you can cap it off with that fantastic anecdote about Milton Friedman.
The letter he sent back to Becker.
Oh, it's just perfect. Becker sends a draft, and Friedman sends back this letter, just tearing it apart for a page and a half. Brutal.
But then the last paragraph says something like, You have some good ideas here.
And that says everything about the culture. It wasn't about politics. It was about intellectual toughness, rigor over ideology.
Using that story shows it was a crucible, not an echo chamber.
Precisely. It forces you to respect the method, even if you don't like the conclusions.
So to wrap up, there's a lot of incredible material here. The presentation just needs to be sharpened to really capture Becker's legacy.
It really is all about finding the tension in the ideas.
So 4 main actionable points for our listener. First, frame the whole biography around resistance and ostracization. Use the Horn story. Build that protagonist versus the world narrative.
Second, for the crime section, use the psychopath edge case to define the limits of rational choice. Lean into the bizarre results, don't hide from them. It makes the theory stronger.
Third, for the politics, revitalize it by focusing on entry barriers instead of dry academic terms. Use those concrete examples, like the Cook County election, to make it punchy.
And finally, balance the depth of the fertility section. Connect it back to everything else. Show how the shadow price of time is the same kind of trade-off analysis used for crime. It unifies the whole project.
We would love to see a revised version of this. If you take these tension points and really weave them through, this could be a definitive profile.
Absolutely. It's a great foundation. It just needs that little bit more edge.
That's it for this critique. Keep writing and keep challenging the consensus.